Okay, so here's another quick review of a watch I picked up off AliExpress. And I bought this as an impulse buy, and partly because of some reviews that I saw on YouTube. And I just thought I'd give my own sharing as to my observations of this watch, and maybe some recommendations to help you make a decision about whether you want to buy it or not. There was a really good review by a chap on homage who gave this a very positive review with one or two caveats. And I guess that helped me to decide that it was worth spending the money on what is in fact a very inexpensive watch. I paid about 156 Australian dollars for it, so it wasn't a huge punt. But I'll come back to that a little bit later in terms of the was it worth it proposition. Anyway, this is what you get in the package, minus the rubber strap that I've put on the watch now. As soon as I guess, took the watch out of the box, my initial reaction to the bracelet was, it feels cheap. So I'm going to take it off and put something a little better on it. So you might like the bracelet, but I found it was quite cheap, not very well made, and it made the watch feel cheap. It feels a lot better with the rubber strap, and they did include a NATO strap too, which I haven't yet put onto the watch. This is pretty much what you get. You also get a box and a little cloth for wiping the watch face. Let's zoom in. Let's actually look at the watch properly. Okay, so here you go. So, as you can see, it's an homage to the Seamaster 300. And what can I say? For the money, it's okay. It's not a watch probably that I'm going to wear very often. And if I were to make the decision again, if I were able to go back in time and buy this watch again, I probably wouldn't. And I know that sounds a bit tough. It is, after all, only a cheap watch. But it's got, I guess, far too many things going against it and only one or two things going for it. Now, the movement inside is an 8215 Miyota movement. And I've observed it's pretty accurate. It's a little bit noisy. The rotor is a little bit noisy, but it seems to be keeping good time. So if you're just looking for a timepiece that keeps good time, it's doing that. As you can see from the watch face, the date window is tiny. Okay, I've got this zoomed up on 2x magnification on my phone. And from an everyday perspective, you either should put in a decent sized date wheel and a decent sized date numeral, or maybe just leave it out altogether. It's there and it really doesn't need to be, or if it is going to be there, maybe it needs to be either bigger or with a little cyclops window to make it look bigger. Now I've got this under quite strong light, so it's looking better than it does in normal light. In normal light, the face is actually quite dull, and the numbers are not easily readable. They're there, but the color underneath them really doesn't come through. Let me see if I can show you that. You see, now that's without the light, and the face is pretty dull. So I guess if you're looking at this under lighted conditions and the conditions are great, it is going to look okay, but without decent lighting conditions, it looks very muted and not really in a good way. Sometimes, muted is great, but notice how the background is very, very dull. And that's a huge contrast with the arms, the hands. The hands are very bright, very silvery, and with a different color loom on them. And from a readability perspective, that's fine, but from an aesthetic perspective, it doesn't really match the dial. The loom is really only on the hands and the second hand on the dot there, and the loom disappears very quickly. So you can charge it up, Let me see if I can do that for you. Just a sec. Okay, so we'll just charge that up and leave that for a little while. So yes, it does have loom. I think Pagani is well known for having bad loom. But this is my first Pagani watch, so I didn't have anything to go on. You can see it does have loom on the hands, but on nothing else. There may be the faintest of a hint of loom on the numerals, but that disappears. So what can I say? Let me give you the size anyway. It wears quite well, especially on a small to medium sized wrist. I've got a, let's say, small to medium sized wrist, and it looks okay. The dial is just under 41 in width. The thickness is quite thin. It's 12.56, and the lug to lug is 20 millimeters, so great for straps. And the lug to lug length is 49.30 according to my calipers. The movement, as I said before, is a Miyota. It's an 8215, apparently a very sort of reliable movement by all accounts, but doesn't have hacking, so you can't stop that second hand. So you can never really set it accurately. It winds, I guess if you were going to compare it to the Seiko movements that are in most of these watches, it feels a bit grittier. The other thing I've noticed when hand winding it is that if you look at the and I'll just turn this sideways. If you look at, there you go. It's very, very close to the top. And I found it a little bit difficult to put back in. It requires a little bit of work to put it back into the watch after you've wound it. It does have a locking crown, which is great. But that is a little bit fiddly. It's, I would say, poorly executed. And if you are going to be hand winding it, it's a bit of a pain. It doesn't go in as smoothly as a Seiko movement. Now on the back, as all divers, let me just turn that on for you so you can have a look. As with all real divers, there's no display case back, and that's great. You can see it's very clearly printed. It feels a little bit rough. It feels a little bit rough. It's not a smooth printing. So you can feel friction and catches with your finger when you run it over. The finishing on the actual case of the watch is not bad. There are no sharp edges, which is good. But and if you have a look, it's mostly polished with a little bit of detail on the edge, which is quite nice. The guy in Horologique said it was the best Pagani he'd ever seen, which to me suggests that Pagani so far have been producing much poorer examples than this. If you look there, you can see there's a little bit of polishing on the lugs on both sides, but from the top it looks largely brushed. Okay, so oops, turn it back around. Sorry about that. So, would I recommend it? To be honest, no. You're far better off waiting until someone like Saint-Martin does a better version. And I think they are meant to be doing a better version of this. Yes, you're going to be spending more money, but you're not going to get that, oh God, I've compromised feeling when you take it out of the box. Definitely when I opened this and unboxed it for the first time, it was a bit of a letdown, and that hasn't really changed since I've had it. I'm probably not going to wear it. I'm probably going to try and sell it. As I say, it's, if anybody wants it, knock me up. It's give me a call. I'll send it to you. It tells the time. It kind of looks like the Omega, but it's kind of like a disappointment. So anyway, there you have it. That's my very subjective response to this watch. It's okay, but okay really isn't going to cut it for a collector. So, have a long, hard think. If it's something that you want, I would say hold off and buy a better version from a better company.